Hello, world. Welcome to Let's Talk About the Real Shit podcast with, you got Naomi Sue in the house, and you got Lori Hatch, my partner in crime.
Hey, peeps. Happy Easter, world.
We also have a friend of a friend of mine, actually. We met this actually about a year ago, because I was in Austin a year ago, and this is Austin, Texas. But we've got Chad Will online with us today to talk about some fun stuff, guys. Say hi, Chad.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
We're super stoked to have you today, Chad, because the state of the world, well, we're here in Portland, Oregon, and it's also, you're the first person that we've had on from another place that didn't come over here at one point. So congratulations to that. Yay, we're excited to involve you over in Texas.
Right?
Connecting.
Expanding our horizons.
Yeah. But it's also good to get different perspectives, and it's good to get it from other places. We're all going through the same thing globally with the coronavirus happening right now. But it's not just it's the effects of what the coronavirus are having on all of us in all these different places, as well as what is to come in the future. So we're going to have a little bit of fun today talking about the failings of the economism. Am I saying that right, guys?
Economism.
Yes. And our cultural love of narcissists. So today should be actually a pretty fun conversation, because this is real things that are happening right now around us. We're going through it. We've been going through it. But our future and what our future holds is something that, so we wanted to kind of talk about, I guess, some new ideas of what the future would hold for us. Waking up a bit to what's happening with the narcissists that are ruling the world right now, to say the least.
That's one polite way to put it.
Yes. Exactly. So we're going to have fun with that today. But before we get started with that, Lori pulled a card today. What did you pull today, Lori?
You're going to love this. It's Easter Sunday, and it's actually a bunny coming out of a cat. And the theme is magic. And I really think that is something that we need to maybe tap into as we're all self-isolating and social distancing, is looking for the magic that nature provides and that our own hearts provide if we look inward and find it. But today's card is, I believe in magic. I see evidence of it all the time. And though the tricks can probably be explained away by something sensible and ordinary, I'd rather not ruin the fun. Other people can fill their days with mere coincidence, but I fill mine with, holy crap, that's unbelievable. Magic. Oh, Naomi, we lost your voice.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Okay. I'm trying to mute it so it actually we have got better quality this time, guys. I am trying. That actually is funny that you bring that up, because Chad is very so much like my husband in the way that their brains think, right, Chad? You've got, you're more logical, you see the bigger picture, science and facts. My husband calls me woo-woo all the time. But I've brought magic into his life, and so there's that part of him that still can kind of connect to the magic side. So let me ask you that question, Chad, because I'm getting to know you as a new friend. So what is magic to you?
What is magic to me? There's a couple ways you can look at it. There's, I guess, maybe the scientific sort of way to look at it, which is that which you can't explain scientifically. Or there's another, I would say, the optimistic way to look at it, which is just the natural surprise of the world. So I get this doing photography sometimes, because one of the things I do like to do that During this time of the year is like go out and shoot flowers a lot. So, do you just see natural beauty? Like that can be magical too. So it's sometimes, especially like if you ever walk in downtown like Chicago or New York, or like cities that are just lined with skyscrapers, sometimes if you just take a moment and stop and look up, it's kind of, you're like, wow, this is insane that we built all this. So that's magical too. So I guess that's how I look at it. There's two different, potential ways to see. Yeah, there's the clinical scientific way, but then also the optimistic sort of way too.
I love both of those ways, and I've done both of those things, Chad. So, I mean, part of my walks, my Corona walks, I have really been pausing and letting my dog do his sniffy sniffs. But while he's doing his sniffy sniffs, I'm trying to find something in nature that really catches my eye and hone in on it and look at it and find the beauty in it. But I've also done what you talked about, being in a city and just looking up and marveling at what human beings have been able to craft and master. I mean, a skyscraper is a master craft. People live and breathe in these buildings and they keep us safe. But then if you go beyond that and you look at the sky is my most magical environment ever. It hosts the clouds, it hosts the sun, it hosts the moon, it hosts the stars. And that's where I really find my magic, is when I get beyond all of that and look up and just am so grateful.
Yeah, I find that like, just taking wonder in like that the things that human beings do, like even, I'm a guy, so I even take, love in like, while I'm not a gun owner, I still think guns are cool because it's something that like men, like we made this stuff, like if you actually look at all of the things we make, regardless of the moral intention of the thing, like we build some really cool shit, like technology wise. But it also, there's, how we use all that's a whole different sort of argument sort of thing too. But that's what I think is the wonder of like magic, is that like every time there's a new invention or like something that betters humanity or something, you just have to take a moment and step back and be like, wow, that's kind of cool.
Well, and I just want to pop in for a minute, Naomi, and I know you have something to say, but right now we're taking all of those inventions and we are using them in a whole different way, like telecommuting from home and Zoom meeting, like this happening right now. This is invention and innovation, and people are having to be very innovative right now to survive, not only economically, but socially and personally. So yeah, we're kind of a magical creature in ourselves.
Yes, I with the whole magic side, I exist more on that side in my life. I notice all the little things all of the time. That's how, my brain works on such a different wavelength than most people's. I feel like I live multidimensionally. I've had so many encounters with different spirits. I have it's a saying that I like to say about magic is it's like, you got to believe in magic to see the magic.
True.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's different, there's definitely perspective. I love that word lately, this whole week. Perspective is a beautiful thing. And it's really fun to get people's different perspective on subjects like magic. So thanks, guys.
A quick question. Do you guys, there's this classic Taoist story about like good and bad, and do you really know? Have you guys ever heard that?
No.
Share it.
Okay, so this is one of my favorite like parables about, and it's very applicable to our time because right now we're in the bad part of it, and you really never know if something's good or bad without time and hindsight. So there's this old Taoist parable of there's this guy, he's got his family, they live in a small village, and one day one of his horses escapes out of the pen and takes off, and his neighbors come out and like, oh, it's such terrible luck you're having, your horse escaped. He's like, good, bad, who knows? Next day, the horse comes back and it has 3 other wild horses with it. And the neighbors are like, oh my God, you're having such amazing luck. And he's like, well, good, bad, who knows? The next day, his son's, trying to train one of the new horses and falls off the horse and breaks his leg. And the neighbors are like, oh my God, it's such terrible luck you're having. He's like, well, good, bad, who knows? Next day, the army comes through and they're going off to war and they're conscripting all the young men and his son can't go. And the neighbors are like, oh my God, it was so lucky he broke his leg and doesn't have to go out to war. And the old man's like good, bad, who knows? So the whole idea of it is you really don't know without the future being able to look back at the past, whether something was really good or bad. I mean, there's an idea, because I'm a student of philosophy and religion, I have very, big ideas around good, bad, evil, moral, that sort of stuff. And that's a whole different sort of thing. But just in looking at, when something's happening to you personally and you feel that it's like really terrible, like I think back on one of the toughest moments in my life and it turned me into the person I am today. So like without that really terrible thing happening, which I thought was going to break me at the time, I wouldn't be who I am now.
Well, I just want to chime in because perspective, right? Your word that you said was we're in a really bad time right now. And I can understand that perspective. But my perspective is kind of we're in a really good time right now because people are being challenged. I'm not going to say forced because forced is a really big word. But people are being challenged to take a new look at themselves and to wake up with themselves every day in the mirror. And sometimes only themselves or themselves and the people that they have chosen to live with, their loved ones. And I think this is a really good time for humanity to hit that pause button and look and see as what is really, really important to us right now. What's really important? And I think that's part of, from my spiritual philosophy, that, the universe just threw a big fucking pause hammer down on the whole world at the same time. When else has this happened except maybe in the Ice Age and when a meteor hit? None of us can remember that shit. So this is like, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting time to be in right now with all these different perspectives. And I can see it from both of your guys' sides, actually, because I'm a Lyft and Uber driver. Nobody's going out. I'm doing more food deliveries and actually that brings up the thought too. I delivered a box of fucking donuts, drove 15 minutes in one ride this week, and I was sitting there with this box of donuts in my backseat, thankful that it was just a box of donuts. But I was like, this is a completely unnecessary ride for me to be out doing. So I'm out, trying to make as much money as I can, but it's a lot slower. So, I stress, I'm one of those that can't pay rent right now. But I also can understand your side too, Lori, with this is one of the first times in the digital age, let's say that, right? The digital age, where we have gone through something globally on this level. So we thought it would be other things. Well, it's a virus. So now as a world, that's what connects us all. So it's actually kind of leads into what Chad wanted to talk about today, about who's running our countries, like who is saying what goes and what doesn't go. What is the truth of what's happening? Where are you getting your resources? What is in our future? Everybody wants to know all the answers to these questions. But I think that's actually where we should kind of cue into our topic today, guys, let's start with some narcissists. So let's just start there. And before you start, Chad, I wanted to read something to everybody, and just in case you didn't know, what narcissist is, you should definitely look it up. But there is narcissist personality disorder, and that is a very real thing. It's a disorder in which a person has an inflated sense of self-importance. Narcissist personality disorder is found more commonly in men, is what it says. But there's definitely, as Lori and I were talking about earlier, some bitches out there. But they say the cause is unknown, but likely involves a combination of genetic and environmental factors. So that's an interesting statement. But they say that the disorder needs to be diagnosed by a professional, and they say the treatment involves talk therapy. Isn't that funny, guys?
Yeah.
I saw that too.
Yeah, so let's just open up that gate with talking about the narcissists in the world. And right now, it's just a very good conversation to be had, because there are narcissists that are running the media and also the country. And we are just being bombarded with both of those things right now. So Chad, what do you have to say about that? I'm very curious.
So let me start with it being like the narcissist focus for me, it's sort of a personal bit, because I dated a narcissistic woman, and there's the possibility that culturally we think of narcissists as like, okay, right now Donald Trump, like, okay, he's a narcissist, this self-aggrandizing person who is all about themselves, but people don't understand the like damage that this does. When a narcissist lives in such a bubble that they, simply put, believe they can't do anything wrong, and find a way to make everything about themselves. And religiously, I've ascribed more to being Buddhist in my life, so I'm big on trying to have compassion, and compassion is antithetical to a narcissist. So it's damage. It's not the, like, there are other like types of disorders that, it's like OCD doesn't really, it harms the person, but it doesn't necessarily harm the people around them. The problem with narcissists is the path of destruction they leave along the way. And, you look at our country, especially now, we're all kind of like, how did we get here? To me, you guys can chastise me this for all you want, but I cracked a joke in 2016 with my parents. And I said, because I believe that the system has been broken for quite a while, mainly because I have been politically involved with like trying to fight with medical marijuana in Massachusetts, and then e-cigarette stuff for a bunch of years. And I know how the system works. And I just was like, I can't, as much as I believe in this, I can't do this anymore. But I cracked a joke to my parents. I was like, you know what? Maybe Trump should get elected, because maybe breaking the system is exactly what we need. Now, the funny thing is, in 2018, I made a Facebook post on it. I was like, it's really funny to watch the ship burn from a distance, but when you're on that ship, when it's going down, it's not so funny anymore. So, it was like, be careful what you wish for. But anyway, that's to me, again, being politically involved, again, like I told you guys before we started, I think big picture. I just don't think small. So I like to look at things over time. And people are like, how did Donald Trump get elected? I'm like, how did he not? The American ideal, at least what most of our sort of age group, I would say, 35 and older was kind of sold, is this: to make it in America, you need to do it yourself, and only you can do it. So that sort of mentality driven into you from a childhood, and that we talk about it now, especially with the millennials, of like, you're all special. Like, it's, how have we not promoted narcissistic culture? We've told everyone to be narcissists. Look at most of the most successful CEOs. Think they're all have narcissistic personality disorder. Like, so it especially, watch any of those hearings like back in the 2008 with the bankers, and just look at those CEOs' faces and everything. And you can't tell me that those aren't just dead eyes.
You know, because everybody's been binge watching TV shows right now. A good one to binge watch about narcissists is Billions. I don't know if either one of you have seen it, but it is. I mean, I imagine this show is not too far from the real truth. But what Chad was kind of talking about when you're when you ask yourself, how did we fall for a narcissist to run things? Well, it's because a narcissist is really good at telling you, like, kind of putting the sheet over your eyes. They lie. And they have to have excessive need for admiration, and it's pretty nuts. Go ahead, Lori.
Well, I want to kind of circle back to what Chad was saying. And, I'm older than both of you. And part of my own spiritual journey over the last 2 years has been really looking at myself in the mirror and getting through all of the filters of my own personal ego. And those filters start pounding you. I think they really start pounding you when you're like junior high age, maybe 13, 14, 15, and that's when the societal pressures really start taking over your authentic spirit. And that's, for me growing up in Kansas, that was you need to get out of high school, right? And you need to get married. When I was growing up, getting married and having a family was a bigger priority than going to school and getting a career, because women just didn't do that in my family. I was the first woman in my family to get a college career, a college degree. So I broke that cycle. But then, there's still the societal pressures to get married and have a family and to do this. And if you are in a career, then you have all of those other pressures that you have to continue to be goal-oriented, driven, and continue to promote yourself, so that you don't get stagnant in your career and climb that corporate ladder and lick the balls and smell the assholes of all the people that are above you and continue to climb that fucking ladder, even though it is soul-sucking to do that, and you lose your authentic spirit.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted after that.
I lost you after that. There was something I wanted to circle back to, though. There's... I don't have the perspective that you two do of being a woman raised in the culture where you're supposed to go do these sorts of things. But I always say I was raised in that generation in the 80s of, you go to high school, you got to do well in school so you can go to college so you can get the job, and then you're set for life. Like, cha-ching, right. It's all this is laid out for you. God, I wish somebody had said, nope, that's not how it's going to be. Because, man, I struggled with that sort of idea well into my 20s, in dealing with a bunch of therapy too, where it just, to get the idea out of your head of what you think you're supposed to do versus what are you supposed to do.
Right. Your authentic spirit. Spirit.
Our culture just doesn't promote that in any sort of way. There's, I don't know if you guys watch Westworld at all, but in the recent season, like to anyone who's listening and doesn't watch Westworld, there's about to be some spoilers. So like they get to this third season and there's a system, a computer AI that they have literally created to analyze people data, like through their data, and plan out their lives for them. So that like if you at a certain point in your life aren't on a path or worth investing in, you're just nope. And it's hard not to see that sort of already existing in our world. And that's the, tying into our main topic, that we're probably going to get to in a little bit. But yeah. But for you, Lori, before we get back to you, Naomi, because I did see you with your hand up, I had a question for you. And like in your work, how do you see the effect of narcissists, like especially in dealing with healthcare? Because that's got to be its own sort of perspective, especially now in our current situation.
Narcissist in healthcare. I think right now our current situation is leveling the playing field, and I'll circle back to that. But narcissists in healthcare are big pharma, number one. Big pharma, they want everybody to take a pill to pee, a pill to poop, a pill to wake up, a pill to go to sleep, because that's where they make their money, right? Let's control people with pharmaceuticals. And then you have the narcissist in the health insurance business, where they can tell you what doctor you go to, how long you can see your doctor, how long you can have physical therapy, how long you can be in a hospital, how long you can be in a skilled nursing facility. And if you go over that, guess what? We're going to pull it out of your wallet to do any more than we tell you what to do. So there's those two narcissistic views in the healthcare world. Right now, I have to say, I think the corona has really leveled the playing field, and this virus has no target audience. It doesn't care if you're black, white, yellow, red. It doesn't care if you're young, old, or really elderly. It doesn't care what country you live in on the world. It just doesn't fucking care. It's going to take out what it's going to take out. And all of these narcissistic entities that are out there now have to come together. They have to pause and take a breath. And it's like, wow, we need to figure this out. We need to figure this out. And I have to say that when the public entities, meaning the government, and the private entities, meaning capitalism, are coming together to try to solve this problem, a lot of egos have had to be put on the table to do this. And I think the corona, that's one blessing that we're getting from the corona, is it is taking a lot of egos down a notch and almost forcing them to communicate with each other and leave their egos at the back door, because we can't fight this thing with everybody's ego punching forward. It needs to be a community, collective solution to fight this thing and win. So we can get the fuck back to having live music and parties and festivals and living life the way we're supposed to enjoy.
So when you're dealing with some narcissists at work, which I know you do all the time, Lori, is that something that you recognize, having the opportunity to have a little bit of a more spiritual journey? Because a narcissist hasn't had any kind of a spiritual journey to get where they are. They just haven't. The way that they think is different. They don't care about other people. So with the coronavirus happening right now, what is happening in the pharma world? Is it shifting as far as, like, because some patients aren't even being seen right now. Is that correct, for other ailments other than the corona? Or is that still happening? Are they still having appointments to come in, or what's going on?
Well, as far as I know, a lot of elective things have been put on hold. Like elective surgeries have been put on hold. If you need to go see your eye doctor, your dentist, things that are non-emergent, all of those things have been put on hold. And a big reason for that is because of PPE, personal protective equipment. All of those things, a lot of those things require PPE, and they're really trying to shift the PPE to where it needs to be. Those healthcare workers that are fighting, the warriors that are going in day after day into the danger zone and putting their lives on the line and separating themselves from their families to take care of people that are really sick with this. So there's that. Remind me where I was going with this.
Well, we were just talking about the, just the attitude of a narcissist and working around them in this time of the corona, essentially. So it's one of the questions that I had is how do you, because we're talking about narcissists, so separate even from the coronavirus and what's happening right now, how is it that you deal with a narcissist in your work field?
Well, I think Chad said it earlier. The best way to face a narcissist is to come at them with compassion and understanding, because they don't get that. They don't get that. They just flat don't get it. And that's really the only way to kind of level them down a little bit, so that you might, and I put that in air quotes, be able to have a productive conversation with them. But I think a lot of these people, and there are some female politicians that are really freaking narcissistic too, that are out there right now, that are trying to slow things down and put their political slant on things. And it's like, just shut the fuck up, people, and let's work together. The whole world, for the first time, is in on something together. And we need to take our egos out of it and put our knowledge on the table and find solutions. So,
Well, I hope that happens. I mean, we all hope that happens.
it is happening to an extent.
That's good.
It already is.
That's good. So that actually leads me to ask you a question, Chad. You said you've dated some narcissists in your past. So is that, you want to kind of go into that a little bit? Has that kind of started your passion on what a narcissist is?
Well, if you go through an abusive, like narcissistic relationship, you have to deal with that afterwards, because you have to put yourself back together, for one. And so I'm an introvert. I'm a super high level introvert. And, I mentioned I have the mild Asperger's, so I've always, been more introspective. I pretty sure the reason I went and studied philosophy and religion in college was because I was trying to find my answers. I spent a bunch of time, doing, ritual Buddhist meditation every week. So I've been on this lifelong journey of I'm not going to call it the why am I here, but I'm going to call it the what am I supposed to be doing kind of journey. So anyway, in that process of putting myself back together, I had to learn a lot about what had happened to me and truly narcissistic behavior. And one of the things that I'll say that, can sum it up pretty well, nobody can teach you how so much of what triggers you isn't actually about you. And once you start to understand that, and that most shit that goes on actually has nothing to do with you and everything to do with the other person, it makes life so much better. And just in little things, when you find somebody starts to get upset with you, or you're starting to feel triggered too, you'd be like, wait, just take a moment and be like, you know what, this isn't about me. And if you can go, through having been with a narcissist and then heal after that, you understand that really well. And it makes you appreciate qualities in people that I'm not going to necessarily are genuine, but just caring and compassionate versus truly selfish. Because growing up, we're told, to be compassionate, caring, and not be selfish. But something I've had to learn as an adult is you got to be a little selfish, because you are the only one responsible for you at the end of the day. But that's different than being miserly, is the best way I can say it.
Chad, I have to tell you that over the last 2 years, I've been on that same spiritual journey, because the last relationship I was in, who I thought was the love of my life, devastated me and took me to the gates of hell. I really know what torment is. I mean, I feel like my soul knows what torment is because of that relationship. Now, in saying that, I also want to say that there comes a lot of self growth from taking that pause and looking in the mirror and saying, what is the common denominator here of all of my issues? And the common denominator from all of my relationships that have failed in one way or another is me. I'm it. I am it. Me, moi.
You are the
right?
common denominator in all your suffering.
I am the common denominator in all of my suffering. You're 100% right. And that is a hard pill to swallow. Hard pill to swallow. But when you start doing the self-work and true forgiveness, I think narcissists are on, here's my point. I think some narcissists are on this planet for a purpose. They have their own fucking purpose. It's a nasty purpose, and I'm glad I don't have their fucking job. But their job, this person's job, was to take me down that far to where I would take a look at my soul and realize that I am not what he said. I am not what anybody else says. I have my own spirit. I have my own purpose. And it has taken a lot of work to get through all of those fucking filters. And I'm not going to say I'm 100% there because I'm human, but I am getting really fucking close to just being free. And I have to thank a narcissist for that. So thank you, narcissist, in my life.
So that's funny that you say that. So I want to ask both of you guys a question, and I guess it's to our listeners as well. Do you believe personally, at the state of life that we are all in, the three of us at least, where we've probably all three have, I personally have been with a narcissist before, so I also can relate. But having the realization, and like you said, Chad, taking your power back. So do you guys believe that our country's being run through, our country and our media is being controlled mostly by narcissists? And B, do you believe that we can make a shift in changing that up so that we can get other people, so that we don't have to learn this hard way, so that we can actually get some beautiful leaders and people who believe in telling the truth as far as our media goes? Do you believe that we can make change from having a narcissist in power into having somebody that is actually willing to make change and do good for us as a society? Who wants to go first?
Go, Chad.
Okay. So I have a two-sided answer to this. The optimist in me says, yes, we can change. Unfortunately, I'm not even going to call it the realist, the nihilist, or any of the other side of me is like, it's going to take a massive shock to the worldwide system. And what's going on right now is a good start, but from my philosophical point of view, and it ties into our other topic, I don't honestly see a way out of the current path we're on worldwide without the economic system crashing. I don't know how much time you guys spend watching documentaries, but I've been watching documentaries since I was like, I grew up on PBS. You know, I was born in a small town in Wisconsin. I grew up on ABC, NBC, PBS. So like, I was all about Nova. Man, I was a smart little nerdy kid. Anyway, if you go watch any documentary about any sort of topic, social topic over the last, I'll say 20 years, there's always some caveat in the end of money influencing blank is driving this problem. So take away the one thing that's influencing all these problems. Now, I understand that this is a totally radical sort of idea, and I was probably one of the only people in 2008 cheering for this whole economic crash to happen, because I was like, all right, we're going to get this global reset that we need. And we didn't. And, for the listeners who don't know what economism is, it's a philosophical idea that the systems of capitalism have outgrown themselves, and we now live in a state where we do we talk about the economy for the benefit of itself, and that is the driving force, thus becoming a sort of like worldwide religion that we are all part of, whether we have accepted to or not, that we believe we have to do things because it is good for the economy and the economy itself.
Yeah, so they make the decisions, correct, based on that information.
Right. Yeah. And, we take data and all these sorts of things to try to, speculate on the future of the economy and what will be good for the economy, but we don't talk about what's good for the workers, what's good for people, what is the overall good for society. And this, ties to my favorite quote about money comes from Aristotle, which is, money is the vice of all man. And his reasoning for that is, when man begins to love something that itself has no inherent value, he loses that part of himself that cares for his fellow man. Oh. So, like, how did, or then there's my other favorite quote about capitalism, which, is very true to today, which is Max Weber, who's the father of sociology, who wrote this book called The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, written like late 1800s. And I'll never forget this quote. It's, modern capitalism is simultaneously the procurement of more and more wealth, while at the same time squashing all fun out of life. Mm. So, I think we can, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I've always argued with my father, because he's like, well, we always, when things get bad enough, we always come together and fix it. And I'm on the optimistic side of like, well, why does it have to get bad enough? Why can't we be proactive? Well, if we're looking at our current corona situation and everything too, that's, again, we could have been proactive, but now we're having to be reactive. But that's just, why can't I remember it's Men in Black, the movie of the Tommy Lee Jones quote of like, human beings as a whole are like, the individual smart, but human beings as a whole are dumb. It's basically the sum of what he says. It's just very true.
Well, I just want to tap into that a little bit. And I really, part of my personal philosophy about coronavirus is I'm looking at it as a gift. And I know that's going to be challenging perspective to a lot of people, but it's a gift for us, like I already said, to look introspectively and look and see what our soul's purpose is on the planet. And it also is a big fucking reset to the whole world global economy, because the whole global economy has shut down. The supply chain has shut down. I mean, we have farmers that are needing food delivered, and we have no place to deliver them because our institutions do not need the food that they have grown. The schools don't need them. The hospitals are shut down. I mean, all of these farmers are going to be losing, and we don't have the migrant workers to come in and pick the crops. And Americans aren't going to lower themselves to that standard. So there's that. I think it's and that's just in America. This is happening globally. So the supply demand chain is really challenged right now, and I'm not sure how that's going to balance back out. It's going to take time for that to balance back out. And kind of on a philosophy thing, I've been studying a lot about the law of attraction, and I've been studying a lot about money flow and money just being energy. And if you look at money as an energy flow right now, money as currency does not even pass through our hands anymore. It's a fucking card, and it's a thought. It's a thought. I think I'm getting my salary deposited into my bank account, and I think I'm passing that on to all of my creditors because I'm doing it online, and I'm not even feeling this money anymore, right? It's just a fucking thought. And if you go back to the Bible and to a lot of us, part of our thought about money is, well, money is the root of all evil. But if you go back to the original text, It's not money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. And I think that's a huge playing field that we're seeing just like flattened right now, because all of these people, all of these entities, people and businesses out there that were surcharging and tariffing and all of these things, and now their goods have nowhere to go. So it is flattened significantly.
So, yeah, to circle back a little bit, because I had this thought and I had lost it and got back to it. So I have a question for both of you. So one of the things I've been thinking about philosophically right now, and mainly because Lori, you were mentioning like, you know, your inner journey, and we kind of talked about our shared experience there. Like, as an introvert, dealing with this time isn't that hard for me. However, I wonder about my extrovert friends who have like sort of narcissistic tendencies that live vicariously by feeding off of others. How long until they lose their shit?
And a lot of those narcissists, both male and female, are in relationships because they need relationships to feed their souls. And I don't know, I've been kind of following statistics on domestic violence and suicide, and I think this is very interesting. Suicide rates have gone down. They've declined, actually. And I think it's because a lot of introverts that have had all these, this is just my theory, people, my theory world, Lori's theory, there's nothing to back this up. But I think a lot of the introverts out there that have had these societal pressures on them to do and be and blah, and they get to sit at home and they're just like, oh, I get to rest right now. I just get to rest. And I get to be creative in my own space. This is my nirvana. The narcissist, on the other hand, that are in relationships and they're stuck at home, this is where the domestic violence side of the scale is going up. It's going up significantly because I believe these narcissists are needing all of their fuel for their ego to come from their spouse and come from their kids, and there's no way in hell that little unit can feed their ego as much as they need to. So it's like going off the charts on these people, and that's where my heart is at. How do we keep these victims, I'll use that word, of domestic violence and their children? How do we keep them safe through this whole thing? Because they are truly the victims of coronavirus, in my opinion and perspective.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lori, on that for sure. So to answer your question and kind of follow your thought too, Lori, I am a big time extrovert. It kills me a little bit each time inside when I can't help someone do something. And that's as little as opening the trunk door so they can put their bags in the back. As a Lyft and Uber driver. So it's different for me because I'm I'm an affectionate person. I give hugs.
She's a hugger.
It's probably right now I feel like weeks into this stay-at-home order, I'm missing the people that I love the most, which, like my brother doesn't live that far from me, and I want to go hug my nephew, and and my best friend Lonnie, like we give the best hugs, and we just crave that moment with each other again. So it's for me, I have my husband, which I'm fortunate, but we get sick of each other sometimes. So for the people that are alone out there, I'm feeling so bad for them that love that hug and that's just that human touch, the handshaking thing. So as somebody, I see things on a bigger picture as well, but emotionally. I have my PhD in
hard knocks.
And the hard knocks of life. I have been feeling my whole life. I grew up religious, Chad, and I actually, because I grew up Jehovah's Witness, I did a lot of studying on religion as well. And I know that it's all going to tie in. But so growing up religious, in that particular religion, they didn't talk about like the white picket fence, like you went to college, you got married, and all of those things, and you were a success. Because they didn't even believe in the education part of it. They believed that you got your education well enough through their religion that was good enough for you. So I personally have had shitty fucking jobs since I was 14 years old. I didn't get the education. I ended up getting my GED later on in life for my own sake, which didn't really honestly make a difference in the bigger realm of things, but I did it for myself. So in my path to where I am, and like what you were saying, when you're like for me, I'm an empath as well. So outgoing and empath is part of it. So my heart feels so broken right now because I know there's so many people out there that are hurting financially. They may not be able to emotionally take the stress of not being able to pay their rent, even though right now we are protected because of the coronavirus that we don't have to pay some rent. But what does that mean when we have to pay it back? So for me, I work my ass off to go pay rent. It's rent week. Nobody sees me for a week. Right, Lori?
Right.
So for me, I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to pay more than what I'm paying just to make up for it? So the only way for me to make this happen in my future, and which it's kind of an answer to the question as well, in my opinion, of what I would love to see people heading towards, is coming together more in a community setting. So, introducing new ideas for real change after this, because what has happened before hasn't worked. So there's that, the future part, let's make a change. So we know we have to make a change. So now we're in this shift, so things will never get back to normal. I personally, and I probably could speak for a lot of people out there, the only way I'm going to be able to get back and on track and on top of things is by more communal living, lowering my expenses, being self-sustained. So there's a lot of factors in there for me personally. I'm missing my hugs. It's hard. It's hard to not help people. It's also hard for me to not make as much money as I was, because I don't make that much anyways. But I'm also trying to take a breath and just be present, because one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life personally, and I know my best friend Lonnie can vouch for me on this one, is that we've learned that lesson the hard way, that you can't change the things that you can't control. So don't stress about it. And so that's a big part of it for me, is that I haven't allowed the stress to bother me as of yet, so I'm not losing my shit yet. but yeah, I definitely am missing the connection. But Laura, Chad, you had a question.
No, it's just a bit of a comment to the, in this talking, I feel like we've had this theme of perspective sort of going on throughout this. A lot of talk right now is that perspective about what is going to be the new normal. And, we really don't sort of know what that's going to be. Everybody can sort of speculate on that. And I'm not a big sort of what if person. Like Shane cracked a comment at Thanksgiving about Chad doesn't have an entrepreneurial bone in his body. And it's true, because I am very risk adverse. I try to think things through. But so I don't spend a lot of time on the what ifs of the future that we don't know about. And especially now that we just don't know what's going to happen. And especially the longer that relief doesn't go on in some sort of way for the majority of people who live around the world, which is poor, it's... I was having a funny conversation with my parents the other day, and there was all different sorts of things I potentially saw happening in my lifetime that were going to be world sort of changing events. I always thought there was going to be potentially another world war, but I didn't think it was going to be a war of nations. I thought it was going to be a class war we're finally like, because the wealth disparity has just gotten so ridiculously out of control everywhere that I figured people around the world were, if you look at what's been happening over the last 10 years, especially since Occupy Wall Street happened, though, there's little bits of that going on everywhere around the world at various different points in time. So it's not hard to not see us on that path. But man, I did not see global pandemic as the one of them, because I thought we were going to, science was getting better. We were going to keep things under control, relatively speaking. But that's it. In an earlier thought, we talked about, how we've reduced people down to data and other things like that. That's been the side effect that science doesn't talk about with itself, which is, I've been criticized for it, and like political discussions and other things, even advocacy groups I've worked with. Like, to give you an idea, I had to walk away from the vaping advocacy movement because I felt they were fighting the wrong fight. They were all about like, it's freedom of speech, it's your choice to be able to do this, you're an adult, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, this is about nicotine. Like, we are not going to win this fight until you change the public perception about nicotine, because everybody assumes nicotine and they think tobacco and smoking. Except when you eat potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, anything from the nightshade community, you're consuming nicotine. Like, chemically, nicotine isn't that different from caffeine. And I was like, look, until we fight this fight, we're not going to go anywhere. And it's funny because there was a movie I had brought to Austin. It was called A Billion Lives. It was this, documentary made about vaping and how it could potentially save 1 billion lives in the next, century versus them dying to smoking. And I had emailed the filmmaker at one point in time. I was like, hey, I know we're never going to meet, but I want you to kind of look into the subject about nicotine. And now he's made another film about it. I was like, well, yay, somebody listened.
Nice, good job.
All right.
But in the big, again, meta picture of things, I think a lot of times we're fighting the wrong fight about things. And this current situation is going to give us an opportunity to look at the way we live our lives. Because I've always said America is going to be the first place on earth that's going to work itself to death. Like, we need to go to a 4-day work week kind of thing, get your personal time back. This whole, and that feeds into that economism thing of like, that you have to do all this because it's good for the system. How, and I'm sure you read in the things, how is that not a religion then, where you have to do this good because of this higher power? And so when I was at BU as a religious student, you have a semester-long course you have to take at the end that is, what is religion? And you literally read like psychologists, philosophers, all different sorts of people's takes on what religion is all throughout time and analyze it. And in the end, I can make an argument that baseball is a religion. So it depends on how you want to look at it.
Football,
yeah,
soccer worldwide. Right?
Yeah, but this right. the thing I like about economism, and I hope maybe people start talking about it more publicly, is that we live in this, it's the matrix. We live in this system that we didn't choose, but we have to be part of it. And there's no way out of it except breaking the system, which means economic crash worldwide. I know that it would be a terrible thing to happen and we'd have to figure out how to get out of it. But I personally philosophically feel that if that were to happen, humanity would come out better in the end, because we would have to, just like when the Great Depression happened and they did the New Deal, we would have to give a shit about everybody in some way, shape, or form.
I have to jump in here because I 100% agree, and I've already said that I think the corona is a big fucking hammer pause that has hit the planet. Another thing that I want to speak to, and it goes to what you were saying, Naomi, about communal living, is I have been blessed as an American to live in Africa for 2.5 years. So I know the difference about living in our society versus living in their society. And I lived in Francophone Africa. So it's not South Africa, which is almost first world. I lived in third world. And I'm going to say my second tour in Africa, I'm calling it fifth world, because it was beyond even third world. But the one thing that I loved, and I would love to go back to Africa in a heartbeat, is they live in a communal society. They eat together. They take care of each other's children. They still live in that tribal community. And a lot of them came up to me as an American, and I had a really cute teenage daughter living with me too. And, we kind of called her Miss Visa because it was like, I will marry your daughter. Take me to America. I want to go to America. And I asked them, to the best of my ability, why do you want to go to America? Well, it's the land of freedom. It's the land of this. It's the land of that. And I said, yes, but do you realize we get up at 6 a.m. and we work until 10 p.m. We don't have, our siesta at 9 a.m. And we don't have our siesta from 3 to 6. 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. There's a siesta in Africa and a lot of other countries and cultures. We don't have that in America. And so I had these conversations, and I do have to say that when we came back from our first tour in Africa, I was with my kids, and we were in Russell, Kansas, America, and we pulled into a gas station, and there was a pickup truck full of Black people, because I'm not going to use African American because it's not accurate for this point. There was this pickup truck full of Black people, and they had all their things in the back of the pickup truck. And I was listening, and I was like, and I looked at my kids and I said, they're from Senegal. They're speaking Wolof. And my kids were like, Mom, you just got off the continent. You're hearing shit. And I listened and I listened. And I told my son, I said, go up there and say Nengadef, which is how are you in Wolof. Nengadef. Oh, Menafrik is how you say I'm doing really good. So he went over there and he said Nengadef, and they all went, oh, Menafrik. And I'm like, we just literally landed back in America from Africa. And the universe gave us this other little memory of be careful. My family was blessed to have this experience, and I'm going to own that. We were blessed to have this experience. And I get these little memories, these little things from the universe, like remember. And I, like you, Naomi, I think this big pause button that we're hearing, that we're feeling, we're hearing it, we're feeling it, we're living it, is going to bring us back, I hope, to that communal sense of I've got to take care of you, you've got to take care of me, and we are in this together.
Yeah, it's when we talk about communal living and with what's happening right now globally. So as Americans, there's some people who have been living poor their whole lives. I'm one of them. But there's some other people who are living even worse than I. I'm lucky because I'm a younger female. So I was blessed with something, a place, a roof over my head, a couch to sleep on, somebody to heat up my SpaghettiOs. So I've had these different moments, but the reason I want to talk, and actually this brings up my next thought for you guys, and maybe to potentially plant some seeds into some of our listeners' brains. And that is, it's not just about the communal living. So it's about, let's start thinking about, and let's introduce some more ideas of making the change that is necessary to happen in the future. So we know what was working wasn't working before, what are regular routines, because here we are in something that none of us saw. A lot of us never saw coming. We thought it would be something different. Maybe some of us have seen it coming, but regardless, here we are in this pandemic. So now we realize things have to shift. So it's not just about communal living. It's about still having nice things and a roof over your head. I've built a life for myself out of nothing. So I still like to have my space, a roof over my head that's consistent. I love having at least a car to get around. There's some basic stuff. But my kids growing up, but I have friends who have kids that are still babies. But it's about coming together and not in a like commune way of life, because a commune, when you think of commune, it attracts the like freeloaders, the hippies that don't want to do anything. And there is a difference. I don't want a fucking bunch of hippies on my property not doing anything. I want to bring smart motherfuckers. I want to bring families with kids. I want to bring people who can help other people build each other up. I want to have enough property where we have our own space, because I think it's super important for us to have our own space. But it's a place where we can start being more self-sustainable as well as being connected to the grid. It takes a tribe to raise a tribe. So that includes the animals that are in our lives, our babies that are in our lives, but also even Chad as an introvert, because my husband is on that spectrum as well. But we need that kind of quality interaction. So I think that when you can build a community that will help you get to that space again, and then think about making that kind of change for yourself in your life, where you're like, okay, let's do communal living. Let's pick some people who are on the same path as us. It's about growing, raising our vibration, but being self-sustained, yet connected to the grid. It's all of these things. It's also about planting seeds in young minds, the babies, showing them a new way to live, debt-free, So it's a big picture thing for me personally. And also for me, in my path, it's my only way that I can see us actually rising to the next state where we can have a life, have less stress, and when a pandemic comes around the next time, we're more self-sustained. Go ahead, Chad.
So I'm just picking up on your comment. You don't want the dirty hippies and things around. You've been to Burning Man. You know you want the dirty hippies. But in the big meta picture sort of thing about that, I am one that has philosophically believed for a long time, before it had a label, of the idea of a universal basic income. I think, and this is, tying into that whole perspective sort of thing, I think, depending upon how long humanity decides to make it, I think we're going to look back on the great tragedy of our time of not being the wars and the violence and everything else. It's that there was enough money in the world to take care of everyone, and we didn't.
Yeah, I agree with that totally.
Well, and I'm going to expand on that a little bit. Money, I hope we didn't lose everything. Naomi, are you still with us?
I'm still here. I just moved in the dark for a second.
Okay. Money is an energy. Money is just an energy, and there is an abundance of money on the planet. Right now, a few people hold more of that abundance than the others, and I think this virus is going to start bringing a little bit of shift to that. But there needs to be this ebb and flow of this money energy to where everybody gets to just live a sustained, personal, yet joy-filled life. And I think in America, we have lost a lot of that. We have lost our potential to be a joy-filled society because we are so goal-oriented and fiscally driven to compete with our neighbors, and that was ingrained in us, and that was ingrained in us from generations. At least in my experience, I can go clear back to my great grandparents who came over from Europe, who started a bakery. It was you have to work hard to make money. You have to work hard to make money. You have to work hard to make money, and that hit my head too. And it's like, no, not necessarily. I have to allow money to flow to me and through me. And if we all allow money to flow to us and through us, and we become less of money hoarders, then I think that's going to even out the economy and allow us to all live more on an equal basis.
Well, that kind of goes into what Chad wanted to talk about today, and how our economism is failing us, right, Chad?
Yeah, there's the current failings of the system are being made all too evident, worldwide with this. You can talk about the failings of the political systems or the failings of this, but for all the talk, media and everything gives to the idea of the economy. Well, how is the economy failed the people that and entities that support it? It's so another, big picture sort of thing. One of the things, especially, I feel like socialism has become like the new communism in America. Like I don't understand this American obsession with having to have an enemy all the time. Like, if you really go back and like study the last 100 years of our country, especially like since the Civil War, we've always had to have something to fight. And I don't really understand it. And, at a philosophical level, I feel that dropping the bomb changed the American psychology in such a way from the top down that we could do no wrong.
Control.
And
it's the definition of narcissism, Chad.
Yeah, and it's so there's a whole bit with that. But getting back to my point about, taking care of society, one of the arguments against socialism or, welfare, those types of any type of handout type of system is the freeloaders, the people who are going to take advantage of the system. My argument is, so what? Like, I guarantee you there's such a small percentage of that. And here's my evidence for that. When I was a philosophy student, I had to take an ethics class junior year. And what that class taught me is that ethics is actually bullshit. Mainly because, I don't remember if it's Hobbes or Locke has this argument that we don't like being given anything free in life, that we personally are not going to feel good about it, that we have to have the struggle to feel good about things in life. And the professor, his whole point was, he goes, I will give anybody an A in this class if you walk out right now, take your books back to the bookstore, and bring the receipt to my office afterwards. Everybody kind of looks around, and I was already had it with this guy because he told me my stance in life was morally reprehensible at the beginning of class one day because I agreed with the Stoics that being emotionally detached from life was a good thing.
Wow.
So I was like, all right, cool. So I got up and this other guy got up and we went and did it, but the majority of the class stayed. So my point being, like, if you're talking about 1% of freeloaders and the rest of the people are still going to go out and work because that's what they want to do, like, who cares about the freeloaders, the people who are just they just want to exist. Like, I live on a weird sort of bit of that because I'm a creative type. And then I have the logical brain. So I struggle with the idea of I have to go do this societal thing. But at the end of the day, if I had my way, I'd just make music, play video games, and hang out with friends. Like that would be it. So I can see both sides of it. But the what I feel was like the bill of goods sold to me of like the go to college, this is the path in life, that sort of system, we're seeing why that doesn't work right now. Like, we were already talking about it before Corona happened with like millennials gonna be the first generation, or like even me, like, I'm gonna turn 40 next year. Like, I'm not gonna do as well off as my parents did. They were a typical American dream. They grew up broke, poor, and made themselves, but that's not gonna happen for me. So we were already struggling. Now there's this chink in the armor that's really kind of starting to make things crumble. And the optimist in me thinks we're going to get out of it because I think people are going to realize that, like, socialism types of things have to happen for the good of everyone. And that capitalism as it exists now is not actually in the best interest of everyone.
Okay, I have to weigh in on this because I come from both perspectives. I came from the childhood education of you've got to go to school, it's hard to make money, you've got to struggle to do it, right? And if you put the hard work in, you'll be successful. You'll get the white picket fence, you'll get this, you'll get that, right? There's a reward for your hard work. what I also have to say is, thanks to a narcissistic relationship, I ended up in a woman's shelter with 2 little babies. So I have been on the welfare side of the coin too. And I have to say, I have to disagree with you a little bit, Chad, because I believe that our welfare system is there for a hand up and a lift up. But there are generations of people who have taken advantage of that system. And I used it, and I used it for 6 years to go back to school as a single parent of 2 little toddlers and do what I needed to do to pay back into the system. So I have zero guilt for taking those dollars because I have more than fucking paid back into it at this point in time. But there are people who take that system and abuse it. And I think that's something, so that's the capitalism, socialism balance that we need to find. There are capitalists that are, the 1% earners that hoard the money, but there are people on the social platform too that keep taking and drawing all of the money away so that we can't find that balance.
But the philosophical question to that, though, like, so, you got it, I use the term handout just because I like to use the
hand up is what I prefer.
Yeah, the terms that they get used against. I was taught that in debating long ago. Use the terms that they use against them, kind of thing. Here's the philosophical question for you. Then is like, because of what you were able to do, are you okay with those who abuse the system?
No, I'm not. Absolutely, 100% not.
So then, should the system not exist?
No, the system needs to exist. But like everything, there needs to be accountability is one of my core words. So honesty is my core value. Accountability is one of my core words. And a lot of these systems, both sides, capitalism has lost accountability, and the socialism side, the welfare system in our country has lost accountability. I mean, when people continue to have children so they can stay on the system, there's something wrong with that. And it's not only just so they can stay on the system, that's a disservice to every child that is born in that situation. That's my opinion. I know it's strong, but that is my opinion.
Yeah, I'm just sorry. Yeah, I guess I've reached this different philosophical place in my life because I'm just like, what does it matter? Like, it's that whole greater good sort of thing. Like, if there's more people in your situation, Lori, that are able, maybe hit a hard time and are able to be helped moving forward, things like that. What do they call it in war? Acceptable losses. Like, I think part of that having compassion is like, there are going to be people that abuse the system. But like you've just kind of proved, like my philosophy professor proved, most people believe in that struggle sort of thing, that you have to struggle for the good. I just don't actually believe in that because some of us weren't meant to struggle. Like, I'm super conflict adverse as a person. So it's not that I would necessarily be looking for a handout or a freebie kind of thing, but it's again looking at the big picture of the social good, like how, especially with as much as we spend on the military and other aspects of our economy that don't really give us a tangible good. Like, what would doing $1,000 in everybody's pocket a month like really hurt? That's just my sort of picture on it. The people who abuse the system to me are just acceptable for the greater good, if that makes sense.
So just to go along with what both of you guys have been saying, I kind of come from a whole different side of it because I kind of feel like I've got the balance here. I believe, and this is something that I wanted to bring up today, is talk about new ways and new ideas for the future and for change. So what's done is done. What's happened has happened. I definitely believe, I'm a firm believer that the system is super fucked up on so many levels, because there's, and the reason partially too is because nothing is conducive for one particular person. We all got a different deck of cards that got dealt to us. So we all have a unique situation that's happened to us, a different upbringing, different perspective. What I would like to see in the future, and I talk about this all the time, and we recently interviewed Ozzy Gonzalez here in Portland, who is running for mayor, which was a very special podcast. But what we're talking about when moving into the future is that we know, that there's technology that exists to reduce carbon emissions. We know because of the coronavirus that the less that we are out using our cars and doing our normal routine, that the pollution is down. The animals are happier. But so my idea for the future and moving into the future is, when we talk about all of our generations, the three of us, and what we've grown up, so I'm in my 40s, Chad, you're about to be 40, and by the way, it's going to be good. When you're in your 40s, it's a beautiful place to be, here, or in your mind and in your heart. And Lori, and you've come from even further back from us, and so it's great though. But it's great. So it's a good actually thing to bring up with things and moving into the future. It's how can we? And I talk about this. I talked about it with Ozzy. The power is in the people. So it's like when you're a parent. Like I'm a mama. So when you're a parent, you want to do the best for your child. You have 18 years. Well, some of us have less time with them because of divorce. So you have so many years with your child bringing them up. You do the best, your best. You teach them basics in life. But for my son is 23 years old now, and it's not my favorite age because he thinks he's got it all figured out right now. And I remember being in my 40s, but I remember what it was like being at his age. And so what I'm talking about is you can do your best. You can be with what the information that you have to raise a child. But when you're raising your child is really where the source of everything comes up from. So like the result of who you are from, like, I'd say 20s, 30s, into your 40s, I think you start to have more information, so you can kind of tone things down in your head. You don't react as much to other people's things because you realize that it's not that big of a deal. But what I'm talking about is the power in the people, and it's being the example and showing the next generation, so the babies, a different way to live. So that takes this generation that we're at right now to make those changes. So I talked about earlier how you can't change the things that you can't, you can't change the things you can't control. So in that saying, we can control some things. So despite what's happening globally and despite who's running or who's in office running the country, there should be some things that we can control. So it's more communal living, more being self-sustained, renewable energy, using solar panels, hydroponics. There are so many things in our lives that we can include now and involved with the people that we love who are on the same page as us, to start living that life. There is really, so what is that barrier to, that's another good question. What is that barrier that's stopping people from making that step towards doing stuff like that is what I want to know personally. But I'm ready for that. I'm ready to be the example. I'm ready to plant those seeds in those young minds that there's a different way to live. And like you said this whole time, Chad, you don't have to go through everything to learn the hard way. You can learn from other people's experiences, and you can learn compassion without going through hardships. So right now, we're in the generations right now that really do have control over changing how other people perceive how life has to be. And I think that is super important to bring up, is new ideas, new Lori, you talked about this with me before about changing architecture, with making more people, like our homes being built differently so that we can work remotely, so that we can have more of a life. Because if you take out the 2-hour commute in the day, that's 2 hours more that you get with your family. So let's start introducing new ideas and taking your power back despite who's in office. So I'm all about making the shift and making changes with what I can control now. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Go ahead, Lori.
I have a thought on that. And I think, I know we've dove into the fiscal problems of the planet, and we've dove into some of the communal problems of the planet and the global society. But I really think our biggest charge right now is that, and from what Chad has kind of shared and what I've shared and what I know about your personal history, Naomi, is with the narcissist in our lives, we've had to do a deep dive. And part of the reason we've had to do a deep dive to come out on the other side is because we have all of these filters that start taking our authentic spirit, and all of these filters start pushing our spirit further and further and further into our core, to where we just kind of become these robots doing what we're told to do.
Robots, exactly. Robots.
Right, I think our biggest charge on this planet, and I have 3 G kids on this planet, 2 G sons and 1 G daughter. Our biggest charge on this planet is for that generation of kids to not experience those filters. Let's let their individual, authentic spirits stay where they are. Let their curiosity be what it is. Let them grow up to be a ballerina or a photographer or a writer or a musician. How that's our biggest charge. How do we figure that out for that generation?
So, Chad, being an introvert, what are your feelings on that? I'm curious.
On like the communal aspect part of it?
Yeah,
or?
just the change and changing the way that we exist, changing the routine that we have.
The way we parent.
The way that we parent, yeah.
I mean, what is it like? It takes 90 days to form a new habit in an individual. So multiply that over 7 billion people on the planet times how much time. So like, I'm optimistic about there being change, but again, like I alluded to earlier with my father being like, I don't think we're at a bad enough point yet. Where, and I'm going to talk a bit about like the Trump sort of presidency. There have been so many points throughout that where people I'm assuming all of us are on the same sort of more center leftist side of things, and where we thought like, this is it, he's done. And it wasn't. And people kept saying, well, when is it going to get bad enough? When is it going to get bad enough? And to me, until the system shuts down in such a way where our daily lives are being impacted now, but there's still people out there going to work and doing other things, kind of helping us function. I just don't know, like without a massive shock to the system, how the whole society sorts of changes, at least in a timely sort of manner. Otherwise, like we're on a weird path.
I agree.
I don't know where we're headed, and I can only speculate. But to me, there's been a couple of ways, like not necessarily thinking about communal living, but I've always thought about like with our political system. I mean, this is to the getting to helping out each other. So I'll probably get shredded for this. I philosophically do not believe democracy is the best political system. I actually am all for. I am all for what some people call like random representation, where we would still have Congress and that, but those people aren't voted on. They're randomly drawn from society, like at whatever representative sort of field we feel is going to represent people, but people are pulled from society. You're still guaranteed whatever wage you were making, your job will still be there when you're done with your 2 or 4 years or whatever we decide for it to be. I personally think that's a better system. But like for fixing our current one, like going forward, there's two roads. Either the system keeps going and changes, or it collapses and we come up with something else. Mm-hmm. If we're on the collapse one, I have no idea how that's going to go. The change one, like if you want to try to work within the system, I have firmly believed for a long time that I think voting one should be a federal holiday, but should also be required. And I think there should actually be a tax penalty if you don't go and vote in a national election.
That's
and
a great
your local
idea.
elections at a state one, because like if you have less than 50% of the population engaged, that's not a democracy. That's something else. Call it an oligarchy, call it whatever you want, but it is not a democracy. And people then, the right side will argue, well, we live in a representative republic, blah, 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 blah. It's when you realize that the system was set up to benefit certain people and keep other people out from the beginning, we need to reconcile that. So I don't see a way, unless requiring people to vote, that we necessarily change the system now. The optimist side of me is hoping that it's weird to wish this, that like during this whole pandemic, I really hope those poor people who were duped by Donald Trump start to realize that those kind of people don't represent him. Like it's that redneck comedian guy who's like the liberal redneck comedian. I forget what his name is, but he's got this whole thing. He's like, I tell my people all the time, these people don't represent you. They loathe you. They despise you. They want to take advantage of you. So like maybe during for me, the gloss on the other side of coronavirus is that maybe we start getting back to truth as being something meaningful and not a philosophical abstraction of whatever you want it to be.
Wow, that's a big word, truth and honesty. Big words. Big words. And I think we are heading into that a little bit, Chad. I mean, this election season is unprecedented. And we don't even know what it's going to look like on November 2nd or the second Tuesday in November. I mean, are we going to be free to vote? Are we going to be voting by mail? How is all of this going to happen? And the campaign trail is significantly changed this year, as is the media coverage. I mean, the media is covering coronavirus more than it's covering the presidential campaigns out there. So, we're already in this kind of change dynamic that I'm really interested in how this whole election process is going to pan out this year.
Well, as we talked to Ozzy a little bit about what his election experience is going in for the first time just right now, because that election's in May in Portland. So that's next month. He obviously is relying on shows like The Real Shit, all online. And right now the media is certainly not going to prioritize his campaign or anyone else's campaign. So it's definitely different for them. Chad, you had a question for both of us?
Yeah, it's a philosophical one because, again, we're sort of on this unknown path. We don't know, like, how are the social distancing and what this is all going to be like come November. I don't know if you two watch Bill Maher, but I've believed with him for a long time, like, because I remember when Trump got elected, it was immediately, okay, we got to figure out how to make sure he doesn't get elected again. That actually doesn't scare me as much as him losing, because and this is the question for you guys, what if he decides not to leave? What if he loses and doesn't leave? where he says, oh, the coronavirus, there was election confusion, it's all skewed, or some other thing too. I mean, it's just the coronavirus to me is more fuel to the fire of election deception, where what if we get to that situation and because he's like, oh, coronavirus, and yeah, I can't leave office because things were too squirrely. Like, where does that leave us all? And Bill Maher's been asking people that all over the spectrum, and nobody's giving us answers. A bunch of liberals have been like, oh, well, the military will take care of it, or the people will be out. I'm like, I don't know.
Okay, here's another big question, and thank you for sparring this thought in my head because it's just now hitting my head. What happens if you have a significant change of leadership in the coronavirus, and all of these relationships have been forged with world leaders right now between Trump and everybody else going on, and then say Biden comes in and he's got to forge all of these new relationships again? What happens then? Just a great question mark, right? That's a huge question mark.
Yeah, the what ifs of what is coming and before the end of the year are huge for us.
Right.
This is a situation I don't think anybody could have predicted, because from the political spectrum, the Republicans have just ridden on the idea of the economy, and now they don't have the one thing they had. But at the same token, we live in such a weird time. I mean, most people didn't think Trump was going to get elected. I'm like, you clearly have not traveled enough around the country.
Right. And I know, because there's a huge rural component to that. But right now, I really think relationships is a huge question mark, and it's huge. I hadn't even thought about that until this conversation.
Well, it's a lot of questions to bring up, you guys. We've talked for a while now. Yeah, Chad, hey, if you're interested in getting in with another podcast with us, we would love to have you to talk more about these kinds of details and these kinds of questions, because it's great to get all these perspectives and to kind of plant some seeds with people. Like you said, we don't know what's going to happen. Shit's being ruled by narcissists. So I would say one of the big things to kind of leave everybody, as far as one of the big thoughts today, is to do your fucking homework, man. Don't feed into a narcissistic's bullshit. Try to be present with yourself and also just be aware of the things that you can control right now, because that's what's going to help us get through the right now. And it's a good idea to think about some things in the future, but it's let's start small by just thinking what we can do and what's in our control. But I definitely want to talk to you more about this, Chad. Are you in?
Yeah, anytime.
Awesome.
Right answer, Chad.
Oh yeah, I mean, trust me. Like, my dad cracked a joke. When I mentioned when I had got my associate's degree at community college, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to transfer to BU and get a double major in philosophy and religion. He's like, what, are you going to be a professional thinker? And so, trust me, I got lots of thoughts.
Great. Well, you know what? It's good. This is all good stuff to bring up. It also helps us get through what we're going through right now, and it's super important to ask these kinds of questions.
Well, if we're having these questions, others are too.
Exactly.
Right?
And isn't that the truth?
There are no stupid questions.
Yep. All right. We need to wrap this up today. We've been talking your guys' ear off now for almost a couple of hours, but we're done, which means that it's a good conversation. So we'll definitely have you back on again, Chad, because this is definitely not over. I still have a million more questions for you. So until next time, guys, thank you for tuning into The Real Shit. You can visit our site at therealshit.net. We did find a loophole in all this madness with iTunes because they don't want shit in the name of a podcast. We called it The Reels Hit. So if you type in the real shit, it still pops up. So hell yeah on the loophole there, guys. Follow us, share it with your friends. If there's something that you want us to talk about, please reach out to us at info@therealshit.net. We'll have Chad back soon, probably within a couple of weeks, I imagine, since we're all sitting here in quarantine and amongst all of the madness. But before we go, is there anything else either one of you would like to share with our listeners before we wrap it up?
Be good to yourselves and those that you live with and those that are in your social distancing community.
Chad?
Yeah, just be kind. Like, that's all you can do right now is just be kind. You have no idea what any given individual is going through. Be kind.
Yeah, that's a very good thing to bring up. We definitely, like we said earlier, each of us have a very unique list of things that we're all dealing with right now. So just have a little, and actually, Lori, you'll love this word, have a little more grace.
Yes,
let's have a little bit more grace with each other. Lori and I are trying to build a global community of nice holes. Speaking of being nice, we've got our t-shirts on therealshit.net. We've got just a stack full left. So if you guys want to get your t-shirts, visit us at the website, because our whole point with the nice hole movement is that it's just to be nice. It's the opposite of being an asshole. Makes you laugh. All right. Thank you, Chad, for tuning in from Austin, Texas. We really appreciate you taking the time today, and we'll definitely be chatting with you again soon. All right, Lori, thank you so much. We're going to let her get to a date that she has organized. I don't know how, with social distancing.
I don't know. I'll talk more about that later.
All right, and also before we go, since I have Chad on today, Chad and I actually have DJing in common. We both have been conduits of music for people for a long time now, and my birthday is coming up on April 26th, which is a Sunday. Not only will Chad and I be DJing our sets, but as well as I think probably like 7 or 8 of other of my friends from all along the West Coast that are also equally amazing DJs. It's going to be a fun day, so tune in to Twitch. To twitch.com, and it's Libra_rising_music to find the link for that Twitch station. So that's coming up on April 26th, and you'll kind of get to see a whole different side of Chad and I.
You'll be glad to know. I called one of my friends. I'm going to borrow some DJ gear, and I have figured out a way to record a video for you, so you won't just have the audio.
See, we're all pre-recording our sets, and we're gonna hopefully wear costumes, right, Chad?
Oh, I don't know about that. You might have to talk to Shane about that one. Remember, she's the fun one of the two of us.
Well, I'm getting my husband to dress up, which has taken me a lot. So, yes, I will be talking to Shane.
Bunny ears, if nothing, Shane. Or Chad. Bunny ears.
She's got a whole collection of cat ears, Naomi can tell you all about it.
Actually, it's a good moment to give a shout out to the ladies of drum and bass world. So, we have cat ears. So, if anything, that... So, all right, guys, it's something fun to look forward to. Chad, we'll have you on probably within the next couple weeks, I imagine, because this conversation is definitely not over. All right, sure, guys, peace and love. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Lori. Have fun on your date. All right, guys, and don't forget to... Be a nice hole.